to establish a quorum.
Commissioner Rana. Here. Commissioner Amadeo.
Here.
Commissioner St. John.
Here.
Commissioner Herr.
Here.
Commissioner Jacobson.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Okay, so if you would join me in a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. And we will move on to special announcements and communications from the floor. And I don't have on my screen if there's anybody from the public. There's no one from the public, so we will ask commissioners if they have any special announcements. Ooh, or communications from the floor. And I'm not seeing any lights, so we can move on again. Does anybody need to disclose any ex parte communications? And I see none.
And then just full disclosure, Commissioner Herr and St. John do live in the Sea Haven. We will be talking about the BMR program, but they're not taking action and they're not giving direction, so they can sit for the presentation from our Assistant City Manager.
Okay, great. Then we'll move on to the consent agenda. And does anyone have anything that needs to be changed on the consent agenda? And
Let me ask one question,
okay,
just going back to the ex parte communications, the whole commissioners all received a email from,
mhm.
and I don't think any of us, I don't know of any of us that responded to that email.
Right. And if you had responded, you would have to disclose that.
Right. Is someone in the city going to respond? Or will we just,
I already responded.
oh, okay. Okay, that's good. Thank you.
All right. So are there any comments on the consent agenda? And I see Commissioner Jacobson.
Sure.
Your light is on.
It wasn't supposed to be.
Your jacket was playing with it. Okay, so let's move on then to the informational item. Unless,
Madam Chair, I do have to make one edit to the minutes. Are you on the minutes?
we're done with the minutes. That's where I asked for comment.
Yeah, so on the vote for the affordable housing overlay, there's an error that actually it's 0000 listed for yays and nays. So there should be a 6, it was a 6-0 vote. So I
Right.
just wanted to make that correction.
I actually saw that when I read it and forgot about it
So-
tonight. So thank you. So, so now we move on to the informational item, which is below market rate program special presentation from our Assistant City Manager, Matt Mogensen.
Do we need to approve?
I do
thought we
have the
voted on it.
presentation.
We didn't vote on the minutes?
No.
I apologize. I just found out we didn't vote on the minutes. I'm sorry, I was distracted. So if we can have a vote on the minutes.
Commissioner Rana,
Yes.
Commissioner Amadeo,
Yes.
Commissioner St. John,
Yes.
Commissioner Herr, and Commissioner Jacobson.
Yes.
And if I can make a comment on, some may question why I voted on the minutes when I was absent, and my understanding is you don't have to recuse yourself over the minutes as long as you do not see anything in it that seems like it would be an issue. And so,
That's correct.
and so that's why I voted. I just wanted to make that clear. Okay,
Motion passed.
thank you. Okay, Assistant City Manager, Mr. Mogensen, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
So yeah, tonight I'm just here to stop in and give you guys an update on what's going on with our BMR housing program. We've really kicked it off lately and there's a lot of activity happening, so it's a good time to refresh people. Sure.
You can just say next slide.
Yeah, next slide. So we, in our BMR housing program, if you're not familiar with it, we have two different sides to it. We have a home ownership program, we have a rental program. We've got both of those things going on right now. A little, so on the rental side, the Terracini at the Dunes opened up their project for new applicants in the middle of summer, and we had a window of about 60 days. And in those 60 days, they collected 850 people who wanted to be, who were interested in renting a unit there. Since then, they've been going down the list and they're working with people. And I'll show you in a second. We also, I mentioned we have a home ownership one. So you can go to the next slide. These numbers are a few weeks old now. So from what I understand, they're well into the 300s now, working their way down the list to find, who qualifies and who actually wants to rent a unit. It takes quite a few people to work through the list and actually get people to move in and get them signed up. But so far, we had 450 who are people who are qualified for these geographic preferences, and we'll talk about that in a second. Of those 450 people, like I said, they're in the 300s right now, but I believe that they're up to about 50 people who they signed up who are going to be looking to move in when the first phase opens up. So it is two phases of this project. There's the first phase is close to done, and that one I believe is about 90 units. The second phase, and that one is over off of Engine and about 4th Street. 4th Street or 4th Avenue. Let's confuse those. Yeah, street. And then the other one is going to be over off of 2nd, near the new to be Dune City Park. So it's over in that vicinity. So the first phase will open up later this year. Let's see, for our geographic preferences, these were predetermined in our BMR program that the council adopted a couple of years ago. And in there, you get a point. If you're somebody who lives in the city, if you're somebody who works in the city, if you're somebody who works for the city, or if you work for a public educational institution. So there's 4 opportunities to gain a point in our BMR program. And if anybody in your household has one of those, your household gets 1 point. So those are how we determine kind of some of the ranking and some of the program stuff here. Next slide, please. So the Sea Haven BMR program has also started finally. And this is one that I know the community's been waiting for since 2006. It's been a long wait. So we finally got to the point though where we're ready to kick it off. Within Sea Haven, as you know, I'm sure you're well aware, there's 1,050 homes. Of those homes, 20% of those had to be to below market rate people. So we have 210 total that we're going to be selling of below market rate homes. Of those, it's broken down even further. So there 51 of those will be for people who we consider to be moderate income. 51 will be people who we consider to be, this is a modified workforce. We've kind of split the workforce here based on the home size. 23 will be of a different level of workforce, and these will be single family home workforce. And then 85 will be what we call bridge units. They're going to be phased in over the next couple of years, where they build so many a quarter. So basically it's gonna be 15 to 20 a quarter will be built and sold during those quarters. And so this is going to be kind of a long implementation, this program. Next slide, please. So a lot of what we talk about in our BMR program is based on AMI, which is area median income. Every year, the state of California publishes tables for different regions, and they say this is what the area median income is for that region. So in our area, for example, the published rate this year for a family of 4 is $100,400. So that means that that's the area or the median income of people. And that's what they use to then establish what moderate income is, workforce income. Actually, just moderate workforce is more of a local thing that we have created. It's not mandated by the state or anything. So the way people are going to use this table is when they want to see what income category they fit into, they're going to go to our website, and we'll talk about that in a second, and they're going to use this table to see what income limit do they fit under. So for example, if they have a family of 3 and they make $107,000 a year, they would fit under the moderate townhome at 120% because they're under that income level. Next slide, please. So these are some just example slides of the floor plans for the different types of products that are going to be within Sea Haven. So for the townhomes, they're basically the same unit. It's just going to be based on your income. So people who are in moderate income are going to have the same unit as people who are in the workforce. It's just if your workforce, your income is higher, so the unit price is going to be a little bit different. But these are basically a little under 1,000 square feet. They're 2-bedroom, 2 baths. It'll come with a 1-car garage, and there'll be 6 on a property, so they'll be divided up around Sea Haven. I'll show you a map of that in a second, but it's not going to be one big project. It'll be 6 units at a time. Next slide, please. Cottages are the next type, and within the cottages, there are several different models. So the first one is we talked about how the workforce is being split up amongst 2 categories. This is the second category of the workforce, and these are detached single-family homes. So those will be 1,000 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, and a 1-car garage. The next level to that is going to be the 3-bedroom unit within the workforce, and those are 1,500 square foot units. They're 3-bedroom, 2 bath, and 2-car garages. After that, then we go into people who make up to 200% of area median income. So again, going back to that $100,400, that would be a family of 4 would make $200,800 a year. So that's how the area median income calculation works. So for that, again, there's a 1,500 square foot model. That's 3 bedrooms. And then there's also a 1,900 square foot model, and that's 4 bedrooms. Next slide, please. So this is probably really hard to see, but if you look closely, you're going to see dots. There you go. Thank you, Guido. You'll see dots. Everywhere there's a dot, it signifies a BMR home. So as you can see, these are kind of dispersed throughout the property. The big blue squares are where the townhomes will be. So those are also dispersed, and they go to the different phases. I think phase 2 is on the one that's closest to Preston Park, I believe. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that. So that's just an overview of that. And next slide. So pricing for these townhomes is all based on the area median income, or I'm sorry, all these homes is based on area median income. So these prices will change throughout time. One of the key drivers of it all is interest rates. And so the whole idea is that somebody in this income category can afford this much per month. So you back into that based on the mortgage and the interest rates and all the other fees that go into home ownership, and they're always going to be at this much per month. So if the interest rate goes up, then the house price goes down. If the interest rate goes down, the housing price goes up. So it will change as over 2.5 years as these things change. But this is our introductory rates that we're kicking off the program at. So we're not, unfortunately, we don't have townhomes today that are going to be sold. Those will probably be the first ones you'll see of those will be like next summer when those come online. But for the other homes, for the workforce homes, the cottages, if it's a 2-bedroom unit, the price that you're looking at there is what the first 5 will be sold at: $464,000 for the 2-bedroom, $505,000 for the 3-bedroom. And then for the bridge income units, it'll be $589,000 and $628 for the 2 different bedroom types. So again, this will be updated as we go forward in the future. But the idea, this is all encompassing of somebody's housing costs per month based on a percentage of their income. So it'll be for the moderate ones, it would be 35% of their income, but for the workforce and for the bridge, it could be up to 40%. So like typically when you go to apply for a loan, home loan, they have your front end, your back end cost for your mortgage. This is kind of equivalent to mirroring that. And it's to keep the prices affordable to people in their income range. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, our program has kicked off. We have 5 units that are going to be sold first, and then the next month we'll open up some more units, and we'll just keep going down the line here. So again, just kind of matching up the pricing with the different levels of income brackets is what this slide here is showing you. The next slide, please. So I mentioned earlier that we have a BMR, or below market rate housing program. The City Council adopted this program first in 2008, and we updated it in like 2020, 2021 to be a little bit more up to today's standards. Within that program, it does set forth like who's eligible, the criteria for how many people are in your home, what it means to own a BMR home over the long term. It means something because they have deed restrictions on them, that somebody can't just sell that home for like the market rate. they have to, it'll be a different calculation, which is based again on that area median income. And so it'll be more dependent on growth in the area median income over time, on how much the prices will go up when somebody resells the home. Otherwise, if they stay there after 45 years, those restrictions fall off, then they can sell it on the open market. So it's a while. But the idea is to keep these units affordable to people of that income category. Our BMR program also lays out those preferences that we talked about a second ago. So those are all prescripted, and that it also establishes the process and how we're going to establish a list of buyers, a lottery that we're going to talk about here in a second, and all that stuff. So today, somebody can go to our website, go to cityofmarina.org. On the front page, you'll see BMR homes. You click on that, and it'll give you kind of some 3 simple steps of what to look at here to first get into this program here, the Sea Haven opportunity. There's also the whole program. You can see the whole thing and get to know it, which is not a bad idea. But there's no tests or anything at this point in time. People just need to sign up for the list. That's all they have to do. Next slide. So this is a process that we're going to go through with these Sea Haven homes. So the first thing to do today, again, is to go to our website. You'll see the link there to take you to the Larkspur section of the Sea Haven website. You'll sign up to put your name on the list. You'll get a survey back. And the survey is going to be some simple questions that ask, like, what's your income? Might be in your household, things like that. You're going to return that survey, and then you're on the list. You're good. You don't have to do anything else. You're on the lottery. So the next thing we're going to do is on September 16th. It's a Monday night. If I'm incorrect, it's a Monday night. So I hope 16th is, October 16th. So I already messed it up. I should have written down right in front of me.
It is a Monday.
Okay, Monday night, October 16th, we're going to have the lottery. Everybody's going to be able to come watch this lottery. Unfortunately, it's not going to be like the big ping pong ball thing because we have too many names. It's going to be a computer program that's going to spit out the random order of it all. But we'll try and make it special. So we'll do that Monday night. That's going to give us our rank order list. So that'll be the first ranking of who's going to get a home in what order, or at least who will get offered the home in what order. So from that list, then we're going to go straight down the list, and we're going to contact people individually, and we'll work with them through the program. So the first step is going to be, they're going to go to what we call the preferred lender, and they're going to get pre-qualified. They don't have to use that lender ultimately, but they just need to get pre-qualified with that lender. Make sure the person, meets the minimum qualifications of the program, that they can afford the loan, all that type of stuff like you typically would when you buy a home. The second step then is you're going to get certified by our third-party BMR program administrator. And that's going to be somebody who just makes sure, again, you fit all the parameters of the program. You're going to get certification. You're also going to get education on what it means to own a BMR home, all the good stuff of the long-term management of and ownership of that home. From there, once you're certified, you're going to go to the sales team. The sales team is going to sell you the home, just like a regular home sale. So you'll be off and running. At the end of the process, we'll just make sure that our deed restrictions and everything are in place on the property. Next slide, please. So we mentioned that we kicked off this window right now. So this isn't a window that's going to close and then you'll never be able to get in this program. But this is a window to help us establish that first rank order. Again, so we can have a lottery. And that's what our program calls for. So you're going to get a survey back, as I mentioned earlier, and these are the questions it's going to ask you in the survey. Is just general information about you. You're going to self-attest whether or not you have preferences. You want to be accurate on this, because if later on when you're getting certified, if it found out you weren't accurate, it could cost you your place in line. So you need to be accurate and be upfront. And I don't remember the next slide, but I think go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so from that, then we're going to, like I mentioned, we're going to have a lottery. So the lottery is going to have 2 pools, people with preference points and people without. So if you're somebody who has 3 preference points, what that means is your name's going to be in the lottery 3 times. So you have that many more opportunities for your name to be drawn at a higher level, or a higher first, I guess, than other people. It's a a higher ranking thing like that.
Higher probability.
Higher probability, yeah, to be called at a first level. If you don't have any preference points, we'll have a lottery for you as well. And the way this works is, we'll work through the preference points, and then we'll move to the people who don't have any preference points in the sales process. We don't want to discourage people that, we do have quite a few people so far, already well over 600 who have signed up. This is one of those situations though, where a lot of people don't understand what they're signing up for. They just want to get on the list. And as we get into this, a lot of people, will fall off for various reasons. Either they are overqualified, they don't qualify, they can't make a loan, or it could be that, by the time we get to their name, could be 6 months from now, it could be a year. Their situation could have changed. They could have moved out of the area. They could have, got a better job. Lots of things could change. So getting your name on the list and finding out later you're number 200 could very well work for you well. So don't get discouraged by that. There's a good chance we'll go through all the people who are on the preference list. So next slide, please. And I mentioned the lottery process. I jumped ahead there. So we will have 2 separate lotteries. What we're doing to advertise this is we've kind of tried to keep it as wide as possible within the city of Marina to let everybody know about this opportunity to get your name on our list. We've been putting out, blasts through our website, through our social media sites. We have some very dedicated members of the Community Planning Commission and the city council who are walking around handing out flyers to everybody. So, everybody's, I think really rallying and getting the word out there. So we think we're doing a fairly good job. But again, if you don't get the opportunity to put your name in by October 8th, if you miss that somehow, it doesn't mean you can't get in. It just means that your name is going to then go, it'll then be first come, first serve on the bottom of that list. But again, if we have, say we end up with 400 people have preferences and you're number 401, there's a really good chance in 2 years, your name is going to rise to a level where you'll have the opportunity. So we just say, hang in there, don't get too frustrated on that. And next slide, please. So we had our first open house a couple of weeks ago. There'll be another open house this Sunday. That's between 11 and 1 o'clock. If you go out to the community during these times, you'll see the open house signs that are directing you around, but we also have the addresses posted on our website if you want to know the addresses specifically, but they're in clusters in a couple of different places. But you can walk through the homes, you can, see what the opportunities are there. Again, we don't have townhomes yet. We'll do open houses again when we have townhomes, but this is, it's a good, the first one was well attended. I would say we had 200, 250 people walking through. People were really excited. So
That's nice to hear.
yeah, I would expect this Sunday will be the same. And next slide. That's it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to
Commissioners,
answer.
any questions? I don't see any lights. I have one question comment.
Sure.
I was on the council back in 2008 when this came forward the first time. Part of the problem then is that we.
Speaking to the
lean in.
microphone.
I'm sorry. Part of the problem then was that we were losing staff, so we didn't have anybody to manage it. So it had to be set aside. And of course, we didn't have Sea Haven then. Excuse me. But it's my understanding that this is first-time buyers. They can't be selling their home and have this massive amount of money, no matter what their income is, to put
Yeah.
towards the house. Am I correct?
Well, there's not a qualification that you're a first-time home buyer. However, there are asset qualifications.
There are
So
what qualifications?
assets.
Oh, assets.
So you can only
okay.
have a maximum amount of assets, and we capped it at it's basically 150,000 if you're under 54, and 175,000 if you're over. So what that means is if somebody is selling their home and they have $300,000 in equity in it, they're going to be over the asset cap.
Right.
So it's not going to work for them in that regard. So it really, it's one of those things where you want people to have money in the bank because you want them to be secure. You want them to have a down payment, but we don't want them to be in a situation where yes, they're selling their home and they're walking away with $800,000 in equity and they're just buying a home outright, because that's not who we're trying to help.
That's not what you're trying to, that was
Yeah.
the clarification. I wanted to make sure that the public heard that this is not your opportunity to downsize.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then I have a related question, because with the equity, unless you sell your house, you don't have that cash in your hand. So how do you calculate that? Just by random estimation?
So there's going to be, we'll have to work with people through this process, but I'm sure it'll work just like a regular sales process where there's contingencies and things like you have to sell your home within a certain amount of time. You'll still have to fit within, the caps if you haven't sold your home. But a lot of times people put their homes on the market, then, they get offers, then they go buy something, it will have to be a little flexible because this is not a standard open market sale. And we'll have to work with people, but we're gonna allow people to put down 20%. You know, because that's what you want to do anyway,
You mean for
Um,
down payment?
for a down payment. Yeah, so if they're bringing 20% in their sale of their home over to this program and still fit into the asset cap, that will be okay at the end. So
And Commissioner Rana.
Yes, two questions. One is percentage wise, how much is the difference between market rate and BMR houses?
that's kind of hard to say. So for the 4-bedroom units, I believe it was 640,000 ish was the sales price. I think if you just look at the Sea Haven website, you'll see what that's saying. It's the same home is what they're selling today. It doesn't have upgrades, but it's the same unit. And I believe those are probably 950, I'm guessing. I don't know if anybody's looked at their website recently, but yeah, it's substantial from that standpoint.
Okay. And if someone has been here in Marina area and he or she had been serving here, but during last 1 year or even more than that, the person has moved out because they could not afford a house at that time. And they come back and claim that they've lived in this area for a while.
Well, unfortunately, there is a requirement that you have to be able to demonstrate through like a third party driver's license, bills, things like that, that you've been living in the city at the time you apply. But I mean, if somebody moved back to the city today and they signed up for the program and their name came up to certify, you know, because I'm saying after the lottery, because it wouldn't be true today, because this happens in the future, they could still get on the list and ask for that preference point. But again, a preference point, just get your name in the lottery one more time. It's not going to necessarily, you know, push you above everybody else on the list or anything else. So, you know, the preference points are going to be very helpful, and I think for people, and that it will help us with their initial rank order, and they will again, you know, kind of fit in there above people without preference points. But I don't know that it's so critical that somebody again, you know, isn't forthright on their application and you know, and then later on it causes a problem. It's probably better just to be forthright and honest and, you know, where you know, and the points you qualify for. I would just advise the public that.
I don't see any other questions, so thank you very much,
You're welcome.
Matt. And it looks like we're going to have a great response, and that's always good for the community.
Yeah, it's a very unique opportunity that you don't see very often
No,
anymore.
it is
So-
community building. People
Yeah.
get very excited about these kinds of opportunities to be able to purchase where they want to live.
Yeah.
And not have to, I know people who have lived in the Central Valley and commuted over here. It's not the way to live. So giving that opportunity is really important.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Matt,
Yeah.
yeah, one quick last question. Is this BMR program, is it patterned after any other city? Or was it?
Yeah, so in local government, we always modify everything to be as, you know, hometown kind of for us as possible. However, yeah, there are other cities who have established these things before us that we borrowed from, you know, ideas, standard practices. We also worked with our housing attorney, you know, to vet the whole program to make sure it fits within all the fair housing laws and all that stuff before it was adopted.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We just want to thank Matt. He worked a full day and then came and volunteered his time to the commission. So we thank.
We really,
And also, he's done a fabulous job. So he put his email up, but he actually rebuilt the whole BMR webpage off the city. So if you as commissioners get contacted, you can certainly reach out to city staff, but there's a whole bunch of information on a separate webpage on the city website. So
very good. Thank you so much. We are going to move on now to the public hearing, which is the mobile food vending ordinance. And who's going to present that?
Thank you, Chair Amadeo and members of the commission.
how do I get out of?
There you go. It's up now.
All right, cool.
Over the past 15 years in particular, mobile food trucks have become a popular commodity throughout the country. They're popular with entrepreneurs who value the mobility and the lower startup costs. And they're also popular with customers who are looking for new and convenient food options. In response to these food trucks, a lot of communities have responded in different ways. Some have banned them outright, some have placed heavy restrictions on them, and some have taken a more permissive stance. So the ordinance that we are presenting to you tonight is designed to balance the needs and interests of residents here in Marina. Next slide. Just want to present a brief timeline to you. We're bringing this to you at the direction of the City Council. We began work on this in April of this year. In July, we prepared a questionnaire that was published, and that was posted to several social media pages that are run by the city. And it was also emailed directly to food service providers that are currently operating within the city. That survey was open until August 15th. We tallied 21 responses, mostly from existing brick and mortar restaurant owners. And I'm going to present the results of that questionnaire to you tonight. So roughly a quarter of respondents, I should say, are indicated that they'd be interested in adding mobile vending to their existing restaurant service. There were some concerns that were identified by respondents, the primary ones being competition with existing restaurants, and then community concerns like trash, noise, and traffic. Respondents felt that mobile vendors should be allowed to operate in a variety of areas within the city. So public parks was the most popular selection. They also felt that existing shopping centers, private property, and particularly areas within Central Marina would be appropriate for mobile food trucks. Next slide. About 65% of respondents felt that the city should place a cap on the number of mobile food vendors. And of those, roughly 80% said that the cap should be somewhere between 1 and 10 licenses. So that's the results of the questionnaire. I want to run you through now why the Planning Commission and City Council should consider adopting an ordinance. The ordinance itself identifies several purposes for its existence. It would increase access to goods provided by mobile food vendors and sidewalk vendors. It could create an environment where both storefronts and mobile vendors can thrive within the city, and then also broaden the economic base within Marina. An important concern for staff is to limit pedestrian conflicts and ensure that we're protecting access to public thoroughfares. And so we've identified places within the city where it would be inappropriate for vendors to operate: streets that have high traffic volumes, streets with narrow rights of way, and then places where there's inadequate infrastructure in place. Also, single-family residential neighborhoods were identified as a place where vendors would not be allowed to operate. And then the most important reason is that we need to establish compliance with state law, particularly where sidewalk vending is a concern. That is actually an area where the state has established requirements that the city is not currently meeting. There would be 3 permits and licenses that a vendor would be required to have in order to operate within the city. First and foremost would be a health permit issued by the Monterey County Health Department. They are currently issuing those permits for vendors that maybe have a Marina address but are not currently allowed to operate within the city. So health permits are required for each vehicle, even if they're under the same ownership. A business license would be required, and then this ordinance would establish a procedure for issuing a mobile food vending license. And consistent with the county requirements, we would require a separate license for each vehicle, even if it's under the same ownership. And we would also require those to be displayed in the vehicle during operating hours. Mobile food vending licenses would be time limited. They'd expire on June 30th of each year, and that's to establish consistency with business licenses, which also expire on June 30th. So just to make it easy for the customer. They don't automatically renew. I want to emphasize that this is a license. It's not a permit. There's no vested rights here. And so the city could opt not to renew a license for any reason. And a vendor would need to apply for renewal. It wouldn't be automatically renewed at the end of the business year. Licenses can't be transferred or sold to another operator. And then some activities would be exempt from a mobile food vending license. So a good example is the current farmers market that's operating at the Marina Village Shopping Center. Other events that have a special event or temporary use permit, and then events that are operating in public parks or schools, for example, provided that they have permission to operate or prior approval from the city. So some operating standards would apply to vendors broadly. So vendors could operate in the public right of way, or they could operate on private property. But let's walk through the standards that apply to both types of vendors. You could only sell food and non-alcoholic beverages. Other wares cannot be sold from the vending vehicle. Vendors would need to comply with all posted parking, stopping, and standing restrictions throughout the city. They would need to provide garbage, recycling, and food waste receptacles. And that's currently a requirement of the county health department. I should just mention here too that staff ran this draft ordinance by county health department staff. We wanted to ensure that it's compliant with their requirements, and their staff confirmed that it's meeting county health requirements and state law insofar as they are tasked with enforcing those requirements. We would also require vendors to maintain cleanliness within a certain area around the food truck, and then to comply with existing statutes regarding polystyrene foam containers and single-use carryout bags. Finally, all vehicles and foodstuffs need to be stored at an approved commissary, and the county health department actually regulates that. So generally it's a commissary, sometimes it's another commercial location, but it has to be stored at that type of facility. They can't be stored in residential areas, and they can't be stored in the public right of way. There are some operating standards that would pertain specifically to vendors operating in the right of way. So they could only operate from streets with adequate curb, gutter, and sidewalk. They could operate for no longer than 3 hours from a single location within the right of way. They can't operate within 1 block of school grounds when school is in session. And then again, specific areas that are loading or unloading zones or no parking areas, they can't operate there. And then they can't encroach on the public sidewalk. You need to maintain a minimum 6-foot clearance to ensure that that access is protected. So on this map, we've identified some of the major thoroughfares where mobile vending would be prohibited. Imjin Parkway, Reservation Road, Del Monte Boulevard. Staff felt that these thoroughfares have high traffic volumes and high traffic speeds, and it would be a safety concern for vendors to operate within these rights of way. Generally, if you go to the next slide, Guido, side streets within 1 block of these corridors would be appropriate for vendors to operate. These are generally commercial or multifamily residential zones. If there are areas that are zoned single-family residential, we haven't highlighted those in green. Vendors cannot operate in those areas, but these would be the areas that are close to existing commercial centers that already have high pedestrian traffic volumes, and that would be appropriate areas for vendors to operate. There are additional standards that apply to vendors that are operating on private property, so they need to confine the entire operation, including queuing of customers, to private property. I've visited some communities where queuing is happening on the sidewalk, and it creates issues for people that are trying to use the sidewalk. Again, 6-foot minimum clearance on the sidewalk is required. Vendors would need to provide staff with documentation indicating that they have permission from the private property owner to operate. And then the city code establishes parking requirements for private property owners. And so while it would be okay for vendors to operate from, say, a parking stall, if it would reduce the required number of parking spaces, they can't operate from that location. Finally, we have a brief section about sidewalk vending in the ordinance. It's pretty bare bones, as you will have noted, and this is entirely intended to bring the city into compliance with state law. The state has adopted regulations that severely limit how cities can regulate sidewalk vendors operating in the public right of way. So 2 of the areas where we can issue some regulations would be within residential zones, we can limit the hours in which sidewalk vendors can operate. And then there's already a business license requirement for sidewalk vendors. So that would be the only additional license that would be required. I just want to make a couple of notes here as well. So mobile vending wouldn't be allowed in the coastal zone. If and when that is allowed to occur, it would be after the local coastal program has been updated. And it would necessitate an update to this ordinance as well. State law and the County Department of Health require accessible restroom facilities within 200 feet for vendors to use to ensure that there's safe and convenient access for hygiene and health purposes. So that is a concern that has been raised with staff, and I just wanted to make note of that here. And then finally, any vendor operating on private property near any business of any type require permission from the property owner. So this isn't going to be a situation where a vendor can operate without permission from a property owner. And staff will verify that before that activity is allowed to occur. On the next slide, we were recently in Fresno for an American Planning Association conference, and on one of our session days, they closed off the street in front of the conference center, and they had like 8 or 10 food trucks out there for attendees to visit. And so I just wanted to share a couple of photos from the conference with you so you can see what that looks like. Our ordinance isn't proposing to close any public streets, so this isn't something that would be allowed to occur, on a whim, but it is something that the city could consider and something that other cities have looked at with the increased popularity of food trucks. And that's it for us tonight. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see, Commissioner St. John and then Commissioner Jacobson. And Commissioner Hurd, you're looking at me like you also have something. Be sure and turn your light on. Not that, it's that.
Okay.
That way I know. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Commissioner St. John.
Just a second ago or two, you mentioned rules pertaining to vending in residential areas. There was one rule that's, remember, go back a couple of slides. You said that, well, it was on the same page where the rule was that from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. was a restriction. And then there was another restriction related to residential areas. But is that in conflict with no vending in residential areas?
Thank you, Commissioner. I should clarify that requirement applies only to sidewalk vendors. So mobile food trucks would not be allowed to operate in single-family residential areas. State law does not allow municipalities to restrict mobile food or sidewalk vending from occurring within residential areas. The only restrictions that we can place are on hours of operation.
Okay. And then just one comment, in the Marina's farmers market every Sunday morning, well, Sunday during the day, if you wanted to see the operation of mobile food vendors, and I don't know if I think it's kind of limited to that. I don't remember a sidewalk vendor there, but we can see it in operation, what they have. In this ordinance, would they still, I guess they're grandfathered in to where they don't need a license, but
They would need a license.
or do they need a license for the farmer's market?
Oh.
It's an event that's allowed to proceed under a special event permit. So the city's working on hashing that out, special event and temporary use permits, and will likely be coming before you with additional updates to the code for those types of activities. But I just want to clarify here that any of these activities require health permits from the county health department. And so whether the city is requiring a special use permit or a mobile vending permit, we'll work to ensure that the appropriate permits and licenses are being issued for these activities.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Jacobson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hey, Alec, what is kind of the current state of affairs in Marina as it relates to, the mobile vending? Because I haven't seen a lot of it except at the farmer's market. And have we had issues with it, or is it banned at this point, or?
Thank you, Commissioner. It's currently not allowed per city code. We were told by county health department staff that there are 3 vendors potentially operating within the city. I've never seen any food trucks operating in the city outside of the farmers market. So, but it's currently not an allowed activity.
And part of the impetus for this is when I started almost 2 years ago, we did have 2 or 3 complaints, and I was like, oh, well, let me look up our mobile vendor ordinance so we can help this customer. And we didn't have an ordinance. And so we're trying to legalize and give these particular business owners some rights within parameters. So,
And I suspect this is also gonna be an encouragement for those that are operating in other cities that they want to come here a couple of days. and get a
Exactly.
license here. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Herr and then Commissioner Rana.
Oh, well, my question is, I mean, obviously, when we amend an ordinance, I mean, there are pros and cons to it. So, has the city had a chance to consider, I mean, to look into, the benefits and then downside of the consequences? Because, for example, when I look at when I look at the results of the poll that took place, was it a couple of months ago? The
Yes.
majority were opposing to these mobile vendors and wanted to put restrictions on it. And can you go back to that pie chart if I remember yeah, there were limitations, and there was if you go 3 slides before. Yeah, and the majority didn't want, 76% of the population residents didn't want mobile vendors. Okay.
If
Uh,
I may,
Okay,
Commissioner.
this I read incorrectly, but so for restaurant owners, they may be interested because they can expand their service, but from the restaurant's perspective, once we make amendment to this ordinance, we have to consider various stakeholders stance. So from the city part, I think it was mentioned in the report, there could be increased tax revenues, and from the restaurant owners, they could expand their business because they can go beyond their property, their current location. But just like I think one of the graphs said, there could be extra trash, and if outside vendors come in, there could be, even though we may not have planned it, there could be some additional crimes which requires extra law enforcement. And if we require having restroom, which I'm assuming would be mobile, then and all those trash, then we may need to spend more expenses for cleaning crews and all these other side effects that could occur. So when we do comparison of what are the pros and what are the cons in terms of the benefits that we are getting in terms of cost effectiveness, we would have better estimation. Should we pass this ordinance or not? From the city from the resident stance, because the city exists for the benefit of the multiple stakeholders, and residents is a big, population of the city, even though we have many restaurants here. And also, I kind of wonder, Marina already has many small restaurants, and if we allow mobile vendors, there could be unexpected competition there as well. Because again, with mobile vendors, I'm expecting there could be some outside
Commissioner Herr,
merchants.
this is the time for questions. So do you have a question for staff regarding the things that you're
Yeah, my
discussing?
question is, have
Thank
you
you.
had chance to look at the pros and cons and did comparison.
Thank you, Commissioner. One of the benefits of considering this ordinance now as opposed to 15 years ago, when municipalities were looking at this for the first time, is we have a lot of data and we have a lot of information about communities that adopted ordinances 10, 15 years ago and have made tweaks and changes over the years based on what they've learned. So staff consulted a variety of sources in preparing this ordinance. We spoke with staff in other communities that have recently adopted ordinances, and then we've looked at materials that have looked at the economic benefits and costs of vendors as well. So the intent is to strike a balance. You bring up some good points that there's a variety of interests, a variety of concerns, and staff work to strike a balance based on the responses that we received, and then based on concerns that we've heard from residents within the community.
Yep. So, I mean, it is good to seek, advice from other cities, but each city has its own uniqueness as well. So while we can, hear from other cities' situations, but also it would be good to have some additional, on-site study as to what are the pros and cons.
That's true.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rana.
Okay, just moving on with the same question that the overwhelming survey results show that the community is not for the food vendors. And the question that we asked the restaurants whether they want to have vending as an outlet of their restaurant.
Thank you, Commissioner Rana. I just want to clarify that question is if we can go back to that pie chart. That's just reporting which existing food service providers within the city have considered adding mobile vending to their current restaurant service. So the majority of those respondents indicated that they like the current situation. They're not considering mobile vending, but a good number of them are. We received a variety of responses from people who are opposed and from people who are very supportive. So this chart doesn't indicate that 3/4 of the city is opposed to mobile vending. I
Yeah,
just want to make that clarification.
Yeah.
12% is very small sample size.
It is.
Yeah, and also just for clarification, another impetus was why I asked the staff to work on this is in January, we actually were approached by 2 businesses who actually wanted this. We had to tell them, you're gonna have to wait till we actually have an ordinance in place. So, yeah.
And the next question is that any survey on the impact on restaurants, all restaurants, their businesses, how is that going to be impacted if we allow the vendors on the streets?
We haven't done any local survey. I don't think we have the resources to conduct that type of survey within the city, but there are surveys that have been done at the state and national level that have evaluated the economic costs and impacts of food trucks. So that's been pretty well established to this point.
Now, your research might show how the city benefits, but how the local businesses, the local food restaurants, how do they benefit or lose by this?
Yeah, and I think Alec brought up a really good point that when I was, working in East Palo Alto 15, 16 years ago, this is a major issue, but now we have 15 or 16 years of data. And there was actually a lot of opposition in cities to this. And what ended up happening is brick and mortar businesses end up getting a taco truck, and then they would go to a whole bunch of city events, at least in San Jose and the Bay Area. And then that would actually draw customers to their brick and mortar business. And so it was kind of an interesting kind of switch to see, at least up in the Bay Area, where people were initially afraid and worried, and then it ended up helping to boost their bottom line. So it's kind of a fascinating case study. So,
Okay. The next question is that why only food vendors? Why not other vendors?
Thank you.
so for like what kind?
Merchandise,
Merchandise?
say
Uh,
clothing, or
I don't know if I've ever
street
seen a
patterns,
clothing truck.
Yeah, there are. I mean, street vendors with selling jewelry or some ethnic wear or.
Yeah, so we do have a peddler ordinance. And then actually further down in Alex's presentation, we are actually trying to implement sidewalk vending, more particularly related to food, because we actually don't have an ordinance on the books. In support of SB 946, that was the law that got adopted in 2018 or so. And so, yeah, but you had some other clarification about why not a clothing truck or.
It's a good question, and it's something that we looked at fairly late in the game. So I think it's something that we could certainly consider if the Planning Commission and City Council wanted to direct staff to look at that. One of the concerns that we had, so the other clarification I wanted to make is prior to this meeting, we met as a design review committee with department heads from each of the city departments to go over this ordinance. So the police department, the fire department, engineering, public works, and the city attorney have all looked at this. And so I hope that helps give some peace of mind regarding concerns about health and safety impacts in the community. Because the ordinance that we prepared and looked at as a DRC was limited to mobile food vending, we haven't considered the impacts of other types of vendors within the community. And I think that's something we need to look at in greater detail as staff before bringing that to you.
Okay, and another question. That the vendors will not be limited to the city, outside vendors also. If they apply for license, they come and sell their products. So when it comes to implementation, so if someone violates, the best you can do is that cancel the license or something. But still the vendor has license for other cities, so his business is affected. So how will you ensure that everything that we have laid down for vendors is implemented and it's regulated and followed accordingly?
Yeah, so it's like any other ordinance that gets adopted. We do have, we actually are in the process of hiring a full-time code enforcement officer. So usually the initial contact is educational and, hey, here's the ordinance, and we see you're not picking up your trash, and it's a very informal, friendly contact. And then if the violations continue, then it pivots over to our code enforcement officer with fines. Alec did reference the fact that this is not a conditional use permit, which is vested with the property, and the property owner has a whole lot of rights. This is a license that the city can revoke. We also have partners with the county health. So we know that if they're not following our ordinance, that we can advise county health department. They have quite a bit of leeway to revoke health permits if they're not consistent with the local ordinance. So I've dealt with this in a couple different cities. So there's a lot of different levers that we can use, but obviously our goal initially is always voluntary compliance and education, and then if we have to move further up the code enforcement ladder, we do that. So.
Okay, and the last one I have is in one of the slides, you said that there are going to be restrooms within 12 feet of the area where the food
Yeah, I was
vendors
surprised by
are
that.
going to be. So who is going to establish this restrooms?
Thank you, Commissioner. Let me clarify, that is a requirement of state law. It's not written into the ordinance, but it is something that the county health department enforces as part of their permitting procedure. I want to clarify that those restrooms are required only for staff of the mobile food truck. And the intent behind that is easy and convenient access to restroom facilities so that hygiene can be maintained. State law doesn't require and in fact may prohibit the city from providing restroom facilities for customers of a mobile food vending vehicle.
Yeah, so it'll be the vendors themselves, they'll be organizing those restrooms.
And it's probably something that wouldn't be required. You know, it's for customers at least.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In looking at the ordinance itself and then the map that you had up, I should get closer to the mic. I realize I'm sitting way far away. I noted that the areas that are marked in green where they would be allowed are primarily industrial park areas where you have a lot of businesses that are not food-centric businesses that would benefit from having a place to run out. You got 30 minutes for lunch, you run out to the food truck, you get something to eat, you take it back to your workplace and eat there. But what concerned me is that in the ordinance, you actually list those streets as where it's where it can be done. But we're going to have an industrial park, at least we had it in the original maps for Marina Station. And we will have another area at the end of Second Avenue, I believe, near the very end, that is zoned commercial, but it's not retail, where that might also be a place where food trucks can be. So is there a way that we can do this without naming streets, but instead using zones in streets that are zoned commercial or CR, not CR, C2 or C1? You know, is there a zone? Are all of these zoned the same way except for the airport? Because that's zoned because it's an airport. It's not zoned industrial. But is there a way that we
Yeah,
can
we can add language that says or other applicable streets or something to that effect.
Yeah. I hate the word applicable streets because
Or-
that's very subjective.
but
That's why I
to-
was
but
thinking, can
to
you
your-
do it with zoning?
To your point, Chair Amadeo, at the bottom, can you guys see where I'm hovering over? At the bottom of
Right.
the Dunes development, that is going to be, it's not going to be residential. It's going to
Right.
be some type of office use.
Right.
Right. So you're bringing that point up. And then the chair brought up within Marina Station,
Right.
right in the middle of it is going to be a industrial park, Ellison, right? That type of use. So we can certainly add some generic language, and we don't have to use the word applicable. We can say a similar street or whatever the commission wants. So,
Non-residential.
yeah. Yeah.
I think and the commissioners are bringing up the point of not directly competing with brick and mortar, but more enhancing the availability of food service in our community. So somehow that needs to be conveyed in the ordinance itself.
Yeah, we can certainly, whatever language the commission wants to craft, or you can direct staff to
I think we would
Craft
direct
and
staff
language.
to
All right. craft
to
language.
craft, thank you, some language that would also be looked at by our city attorney to make sure that we are compliant with state law. We're not creating a problem for enforcement. That would be
Right.
important.
Right. We can certainly work with, yeah, that's fine. We can do that.
Okay, thank you. That was my only comment. Let's see, we've got two others. So, Commissioner Herr, you have your light on?
Oh, sorry, I didn't find it.
Okay, and Commissioner Rana, your light is still on. Did you have another comment or question?
Okay. Comment may be that we are developing Marina as a tourist destination. A lot of infrastructure is coming up, housing, everything. We expecting more people to come and live and enjoy in Marina. My concern is that this kind of a measure is going to alter the character and landscape of the city with the food trucks here and there, and it gives a very ordinary kind of a city. So I will not be in support of this kind
Okay.
of legislation. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Commissioner St. John.
Now, just one final question. Have you determined or established the limit on the number of permits?
Thank you, Commissioner. We did not establish a cap on the number of permits, and we had discussions with the city attorney about this and felt that the most appropriate way to regulate this was to use a licensing process rather than a permitting process, so that staff can control when and how often licenses are issued. One of the concerns about doing a cap was that it could create a situation where we need to have a lottery or some type of situation where staff is more involved in deciding who gets to operate than we have resources to do. So a licensing process is pretty simple. It's straightforward. It's clear to staff. It's clear to customers. And it allows us for any reason to say your license is not going to be renewed this year. And so I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Commissioner Herr.
Mine is more of a comment though, because before passing the amendment, because what I'm hearing today is, for example, when the question about the restaurant was asked, oh, that can be controlled, but there may, or the cleaning that can be, supervised, or so it seems that the comments that I'm hearing is more related to possible speculations that, we can handle that. But when we look at the reality, do we have enough power? I mean, do we have enough manpower? Do we have enough budget to do all that? So there are many things that should be taken into consideration. So my recommendation is, this is my personal recommendation, but we can take, before passing an amendment, we can take time to look at the data that existed, and also if necessary, we can, get some more information before passing an ordinance. Because once we pass an ordinance, there could be things that are beyond our control. So that's my
Okay.
personal thought.
And we don't have the full body of the planning commission. If there are specific, if there are fundamental, like, no, I'm not going to vote for the ordinance, that's one thing. But if there are specific data points or requests, we can certainly look that up when we have Commissioner Woodson and Walton with us. So that's an option for the commission tonight. So.
There are no lights on, but I do have a couple of comments. I am concerned when we vote on anything that we are voting on it on an emotional basis, as opposed to looking at the ordinance. Does it meet state law requirements? It is everything that's in here appropriately applicable to state law, city ordinances, county ordinances? That to me is what planning commission needs to be doing, rather than going, I really don't like the idea of having food trucks. Because some of us don't like the idea of having food trucks, but I think that we have to look at, does this work? It's coming before us because there is interest in food trucks in this community. Staff has worked on it because of that interest. They certainly have looked at other cities and evaluated how it has worked and not worked in other cities. What were the problems that they faced? What we learned is we don't get to have toilets for customers. It's strictly it's got to be on the truck, I'm assuming, but it is strictly for the employees. And that's why I said I looked at the ordinance itself, and it's in industrial park areas where people. My husband worked for Dole, and he worked for McCormick, and he worked up at Sun Microsystems, and the food trucks came to the vicinity so that people who worked there, who maybe they had an hour for lunch, But by the time you go to a restaurant, a brick and mortar, you sit down, you order, you wait for it, it comes, you still are sitting. You've used up more than your hour. It's hard to get back to work on time unless you're working in a place that has lots of restaurants available for you. I mean, I look at some of our restaurants and there's always a line. Always a line. People love going to them, but it creates a problem for the worker in the area to have the opportunity to have good food, readily accessible, and take it back to their place of work. And some of these places, no doubt, they will put out tables where they can so that their customers can eat there if they want to. And they have to have trash receptacles. And if they don't follow that, that's in the ordinance. They don't get to renew their license again because they're not following the ordinance. And I would suspect that their license can be revoked if they're not following the ordinance. It's not just not a matter of we won't renew it, but that's where code enforcement comes in. They have that conversation. They give them the opportunity to comply. But if they don't comply, that's a health and safety issue. And that's a reason to revoke the license. So I think that we are in this ordinance addressing all the issues, although we didn't say in the ordinance that a license can be revoked. We can say it can't be renewed. So it should be in, I didn't see it in the ordinance. Is it in there?
Yes.
Thank you,
It
Chair.
is, it
If you look in 10.46.030, it's 030 in my copy. Under required permits and licenses, there's a section C that relates to expiration and renewal. And then, oh, I'm sorry.
10.6.
I apologize.
10.46.030 section C.
Okay.
Thank you, Allison.
Section C.
I was in the wrong section.
Expiration and renewal.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Those fees, there's some. See, I'm seeing non-renewal. I'm not seeing revoke.
Yeah,
Okay.
each license is time limited and there's no guarantee of renewal.
Right.
A mobile vendor license shall expire on June 30th of each calendar
Right.
year. Yeah, there is no mobile vending license shall be automatically renewed. All this language was purposely put in there by our city attorney because of some other experience she had with the permit,
Right.
where it was very clear in an ordinance that she worked on that said this permit is not renewable, and then somehow the customer still tried to fight the city. So that's why the language here is very
But all of
clear.
it is about renewal. I
Yeah.
don't see about revocation of a license.
Thank you, Chair. I apologize. I pointed you to the wrong section. If you go to 10.46.060,
060.
There we go.
license denial, suspension and revocation. And it states in item A that a license can be revoked for any reason, including but not limited to violation of.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I am glad that it's there because that to me addresses a lot of the concerns of the health and safety issues that the commissioners brought up. Is it can be revoked if after they go through code enforcement and they still are in violation, the license is gone.
Right,
And,
that's correct.
and I would think that the county also would revoke their license because it's health and safety. So they would not be operating in the county as well.
Exactly.
Okay. But that's what I believe the commissioners need to be looking at is you've addressed your concerns. Are they addressed within the ordinance? You can't get data from something you haven't done before. So you have to get it from someplace else.
So in case people misunderstood me, what I was saying was since Alec was mentioning that there were many data from the past, so revisit and look at what data we have, and also if necessary, we can get seek more data. But at least rather than passing it tonight, we can, before passing an amendment, we can always revisit and see what are the pros and cons. So I'm not saying that I'm against it. I'm saying that let's look at the data more. Since you know,
So
as the step mentioned, there are so many, if we have so many data, then we can, rather than just passing it.
um, staff hasn't given us the data that they looked at to come up with the charts that they have. And I feel like maybe that's what you're asking for is,
If there are so much out there.
so do we have,
And it
how
seems
recent,
that
how
even-
recent is the data that we do have? I know it takes a while to put together an ordinance. So has this been explored over, say, the last 2 years or the last year? Because I think that's what I'm hearing from Commissioner Her. You want to have the most recent data?
So, I mean, at least from different, and not the most recent, but at least from the different time periods. And when was the year that you mentioned, Eric?
We,
And like-
I'm not sure that there's a specific year. We looked at data and ordinances from a variety of communities. I'll just say here, the Great Recession was kind of the time that food trucks exploded throughout the country. And so in the late 2000s, that was the early wave of communities panicking and trying to figure out how to regulate these. And since then, we've now had 15 years of experience and practice and communities to look at, data to look at, and we'd be happy to provide what we reviewed to the commission.
Yeah, that would be great. Because again, we need to look at the evidence, data shows us evidence, of how people responded. And just by the survey result, I mean, because I have research background, this 21 response is, from statistical perspective, it's really, we can't really justify and generalize the data based on what we've seen from the survey results.
Isn't it related to how many restaurants are in Marina? Because that's all they ask for, restaurant owners.
Right.
So 21, I don't know how many restaurants there are, but that's a significant
Exactly.
return for that size of a.
Because when we look at data evidence, we have to look at it from multiple, stakeholders' perspective. So, I mean, who are these data representing? If it is, I mean, mostly from restaurant owners, then we are only targeting only one portion of the interest groups. It doesn't represent the whole population of Marina, both from the commercial end and from residential end. That's why I'm asking for more time to look at the
I
evidence.
understand now what you're asking.
Yeah, we can. We hear what the commissioner is saying, and if it's the will of the commission, we can certainly do some more survey data. I would point out for the general plan, which is a huge undertaking that, Remy and Associates have reached out to thousands of people at this point. We've only gotten, we've gotten 600 people, which is actually pretty impressive. But you would, all the work we went into for just to get the 600, we probably have however many thousands of contacts, right? So we can certainly come back and do a broader survey, but just full disclosure, we're probably not going to have 300 or 400 people that respond, right? That's just the reality of urban planning and people being busy and all that. But if that's the will of the commission, we can certainly come back.
If I can add to that, the other stakeholders are the people, the businesses, and the employees of the places that will be impacted by this, which is the industrial park areas. Do they see a benefit for it? Because what truck's going to want to go out there and sit and not make any money?
Right.
And, and do businesses feel that it would make sense for their employees? So it's not a huge area to be looking at. But if you want to go, if the commission decides they want to move forward with more data, I would say that would be the appropriate place. I did notice there was a bit on Cardoza and there's no businesses there. It's the park that's in green.
Yeah.
And I wasn't real sure why it was by the park.
Yeah.
Because it's all residential in that area.
And that's fine. We can certainly reach out to those particular business owners, but the challenge of being an urban planner is commissions and councils often will ask staff, hey, do more outreach. Then we'll do more outreach and then we'll come back and then it'll say, hey, you need to do more.
You've got
So,
10 responses. out
Right,
of-
so we will, if that's the will of the commission, we will certainly do a little bit more, but like I said, once again, full disclosure. We will do our best, so.
Okay, next would be Commissioner St. John and then Commissioner Rana.
Thank you, Chair. I want to just make a couple of comments. First, the state and the county have licensing requirements for sidewalk vendors and truck vendors. And the city of Marina does not. So that is a shortfall in our codes. We don't have that addressed. Second is that we do have an example of food truck vendors every Sunday for a large portion of the day, from at least 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning until well into the afternoon, where there are at least half a dozen or more food truck vendors in the city of Marina right now without an ordinance, because they have a special permit to have this farmers market.
Right.
And so without the ordinance, they are limited by the rules of the county and the state. That's their operation. And the county and the state very seldom come to the city of Marina on Sunday morning to take a look at the food truck vendors. But I've been there many times over the last 3 years, and they do a pretty thriving business, or they wouldn't come back. Okay, because most of them drive a significant distance just to get here. They are not locally housed. So I think the city has shown an acceptance of the food truck vendors every Sunday, or at least any of the businesses and the population that visit that farmers market are well aware of food truck vendors. And there's pretty good lines every Sunday at each of the vendors. And on Monday, the parking lot is not littered with the trash. They're well regulated, self-regulating. Okay, and they do have trash containers and what have you. So I think that the city needs this ordinance because we already have this service, at least on a Sunday. And they're operating without the ordinance. They're covered by the county and the state.
Right. And the permit
And the permit
for
for
the farmer's market.
the farmer's market to have this kind of service. So anyway, that's just my comments that we already have it. We have an example of it. And I'm not aware, and maybe staff wouldn't know whether there has been complaints about the food truck vendors at the farmer's market on Sundays. That's just another question for staff.
Not that I'm aware of at the farmer's market. There were some complaints early this year on other parts of the city, but actually Allison's done some outreach. I haven't heard of any complaints. No, I know, that's true. Not at the farmer's market.
This truck, I think that you show in one of the pictures, you're showing examples of the food truck vendors. Yeah, this one. I'm pretty sure that this red truck with the real Philly is every Sunday at
That was taken at the Fresno American Planning Conference, but they could come to Marina.
people
It's
drive
like
from
a-
Fresno. Some of a lot of the farmers.
I'm from
are in
Fresno. It's 110 in the summer, so a lot of people come to the Central Coast. They're in hot, they're, yeah. so
I think these guys drive in from Fresno every Sunday.
They might.
Okay.
So Commissioner St. John's bringing up a fundamental question of why we're also pushing this forward is, there's a couple of things in play. We don't have an ordinance now, so we don't really have a way to regulate these type of businesses. The other thing is for those ones that Commissioner St. John mentioned, technically you could say, hey, don't come to our city. So we're actually trying to find a mechanism to support these small business owners. And if you have an ordinance and it's on the books and it's equitably enforced, you're actually giving small business owners some rights, right? So, right, but so there's two different, there's a lot of stuff going on in play, but he brought up some fundamental points we thought we should bring up, so.
Commissioner Rana.
The recommended motion says to regulate mobile food vending, sidewalk vending. So it is, to that extent, it is okay that we're trying to regulate their acts. But is there something that we issue licenses except for the farmers market? Are food vendors allowed to bring in their trucks now? Does anything exist as of now?
Technically, no.
Okay, so
But-
that is where the question comes. That we have this city say the county regulations and we have the state laws. Anything we do, we have to be in compliant. But none of these regulations or laws mandate that we must follow a particular course. And that is what my question is. That it's not mandated, even if it complies, it has to comply because we cannot do any business which is against the state law or even the county law. So when we talk about emotions or expressing personal opinion and all that, we as the concerned citizens or the members of this community, we are supposed to do that. And since this whole act that to allow the vendors to come in and also the regulations is not based on adequate research as such, as I asked a question, whether the local food restaurants, have they been taken into confidence that how this measure is going to impact their own business? We don't even know. But they are the important stakeholders. We cannot just ruin our own local food, the food restaurants by adding something which they may not like. So That's
So
question.
to answer your question, so any ordinance that this commission recommends to the council has to be compliant with state and county laws and regulations. So the ordinance has been vetted by the city attorney and the county health department. So to answer your question, yes, we are being compliant in terms of what, we did share some of the survey data that we did. But the fundamental question is, does the commission want an ordinance on the books that will allow the city to give small business owners certain rights and also help us regulate this type of use? That's really the fundamental question, so.
If I might add one more item regarding Commissioner Rana's comment. So the survey that we did, we actually emailed every single restaurant owner with a business license in the city of Marina specifically to ask them to please take this survey. So the 21 respondents are from licensed brick and mortar existing restaurants. Yes, there were only 21 respondents, but we personally emailed every single restaurant owner in Marina to ask them to please participate in this survey so we could get your feedback. And that's what we got. Yes, there was only 21 respondents, but we made the effort and we wanted specifically, rather than doing a citywide, which we usually do, like for the general plan or housing element, we're usually trying to get a broad swath of the community, but for this particular one, we wanted to hear specifically from the existing restaurant owners about what impacts. And there were quite a few responses where we're concerned about competition. We did have that response. Other respondents said, oh, we're interested in perhaps purchasing a mobile food truck and adding that to our existing brick and mortar. So I'm sure that every ordinance that the city has ever adopted is going to make one or two people unhappy. But the majority of the people who participate in the public process. This was a duly noticed hearing with a legal ad in the newspaper, social media. So we are happy to broaden our survey and do a citywide, or maybe even focus on like specific business park owners. But I just want to point out that this was the basis of the survey, and that was we did have one council member directly contact us with their concerns about competition. And that was kind of one of the reasons why we decided to focus on existing restaurant owners. So hopefully that clarifies a little bit.
Thank you so much. I'm going to add to the discussion a little bit because Commissioner St. John brought up the Sunday afternoon farmers market and the amount of vendors that are there. And they have all kinds of vendors. They have crafts and everything there. But one of the things that I've noticed is that the restaurants that people like that are in that shopping center are still very busy. They get as much business as they would whether the trucks were there or not, because people like those restaurants and they go there and they would rather go and sit down and have food that they're very familiar with. And so they enjoy those brick and mortar, and others want to eat while they're walking around and they use the trucks. The other thing is that over the years, and this has been since 2008 when I was on the council for the first time, people who do business within the industrial parks have said to me, ever since 2008, I sure wish that we had food trucks here, because getting lunch or getting dinner or getting breakfast or having a cup of coffee and a donut in the morning, because I have to be at work at 6 o'clock in the morning and the restaurants aren't open, would be so nice. So I hear it over and over and over again. And sometimes there are small events that occur in those business parks, but they can't have a food truck because the food truck is on a city street. And so it's hard on them because they would like to have that opportunity to have regular service in the business industrial park areas. And this provides for that. It's not going down Reservation Road or in the interior of our hopefully someday downtown specific plan area. It is truly limited to the industrial park areas where they don't have direct competition and there is a need. So, Commissioner Rana, your light is still on? Okay. Commissioner Jacobson?
I don't know why we're making this so controversial. Do you see any restaurant owners sitting out here? Do you see any restaurant owners online? Do you see any citizens? No, you don't see it. It's not as controversial as everybody's making out to be. It comes back to, we don't have an ordinance. We need an ordinance. We need to be in compliance with state and county law. This makes us there. I don't know why it's controversial. Thank you.
Okay. Your light is still on. Thank you.
And Chair Amadeo, we actually do have one member of the public and we actually have not had public comment yet.
Okay, so let's get
So
some
I don't
public
know if-
oh, yes, you are correct.
There's a
So-
gentleman by the name of Jojo.
Jojo, you are allowed to speak. Welcome. And you are still muted. Can you unmute yourself, please?
There we go.
Okay,
Hi,
you are.
okay. Yeah, I have absolutely nothing to say here other than I don't know why this is so controversial either. Food trucks have been an enjoyable participant in communities around California for quite a while, and they bring in a lot of foot traffic where you probably would want to see it. So I would say I'd like the commission to at least engage the idea of food trucks. Thank you.
Thank you, Jojo.
That concludes, I believe, all of the vast array of public comment. So
Okay. All right. So it is time for a motion. Would somebody like to make a motion? Commissioner St. John.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I move to adopt resolution 2023-X Exhibit A, recommending to the City Council of the City of Marina that it amend Title 10 of the Marina Municipal Code by adding Chapter 10.46 to regulate mobile food vending and sidewalk vending. This motion is based on the findings presented and CEQA exemptions in section 15060 C2 and 15061 B3. Thank you.
Okay, we've had a motion by Commissioner St. John. Do we have a second?
I would like to second.
Okay, we have a second by Commissioner Jacobson. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Rana,
No.
Commissioner Chair Amadeo,
Yes.
Commissioner St. John,
Yes,
Commissioner Herr,
I would say no, because as I mentioned earlier, I'm asking for more data.
that's fine. Commissioner Jacobson,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you very much. And I believe the last things we have are there any study sessions coming up?
No, but real quick before we move on, we don't want to invalidate the two commissioners who voted no. We value your input, and I will be directing staff to reopening the survey before it goes to council. So Commissioner Herr and Commissioner Rana, we don't want you to feel like your opinions were invalidated today. So we do appreciate all commissioners' input today. So thank you. So
Absolutely.
what was the question, Chair Amadeo?
I asked if there was any study sessions. and I
Yes,
believe
we
there
have a
is
lot
one.
going on. So we had an environmental justice workshop for the general plan on Monday. We're having another workshop with the general plan next Thursday. We have our next planning commission meeting. Please be here. We're doing our objective standards joint study session with the city council. We thought it would be a good idea to have both the commission and council get together to provide input so that we can hopefully streamline getting this thing adopted.
Is the commission the lead on that? Or does is the council the lead?
The council will probably sit where you are because they are the council.
Right, that's.
And then
what
we'll
I
have
thought,
some
but I
tables
wanted to
set
make
out here for the commission. We always defer to people above us, right?
sure.
So,
Right.
so that'll be October 12th, same time. And that actually same day from 5 to 6 p.m., there is a delegation from, and Commissioner Herr, I'm probably going to mess up the city name. Nam Wan, is that the name?
Yes.
There's a delegation from the Korean city of Nam Wan who's going to come get an award from the council. There'll be some light refreshments and drinks. So from 5 to 6, and then right at 6 o'clock, we'll go into the study session with the council and commission.
So it's a kickoff of sister city relationship.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And perhaps there will be some things in here that we have in the main office in City Hall that are part of things that have been gifted to us from
Right.
the city that would be on display for people to see.
Exactly.
That's great. Okay. Anything else in study sessions?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing a general plan update to the council in November. I had a meeting with the downtown consultant. We're going to be releasing the EIR for the downtown in the next 60 days. We're going to have a study session with the planning commission about the downtown plan, probably beginning November, late October. There's a lot going on in the planning department. So
Quick updates. Number one, Marina Station. I know that's moving along in the background, but can you give us a little bit of an update on Marina
yeah, they
Station?
filed for their grading permit in late July, August. Allison's been working really hard about getting the affordable housing agreement to council. So we're making a lot of progress on that.
I have had some questions and I don't know why people want to know, but people want to know who the developer of the project is.
Third Millennial Partners.
Third Millennial. Okay. And then I noticed that again, the new Starbucks, well, the old Starbucks moved
The
to the new
new, yeah,
location,
the old new, yeah.
is torn up again. Do you know what's going on?
I saw them pouring concrete when I drove past them on Tuesday, so I could certainly follow up with.
Yeah, there's
So-
an area near the corner that has been, the cement is torn up again. The parking lot is being paved, but it seems like this has taken an extraordinary amount of time, and with that being torn up, I know it was torn up before because of PG&E. And is that what's going on again?
More than likely, a lot of the projects have been held up by PG&E, but I can follow up with the applicant.
Okay, because it would be nice if if the construction finally completed, they got
Yeah.
to move. Yeah, it would be much better for the city and certainly much better for them. This has been a disaster for them. Okay. I'm trying to think. Oh, can you tell us how the promenade is coming along?
The promenade,
Mhm.
they within the dunes, yes.
Yes.
We're about to issue the building permit probably in the next 30 days for all of the major commercial buildings within the promenade.
Good.
So
That's good news. And I understand that the brewery place,
Brass Tap.
Brass Taps, that they've already
They've
They're-
gone
they've
vertical.
gone
They've
vertical.
gone vertical. We're doing a lot line adjustment for them to work out some property issues. And I'd heard, I can't remember who I heard it from, but they were actually going to be actively starting to recruit for positions at the restaurant
oh, great.
soon. It was coming. So I thought,
And do
I'd
they
heard-
have a time frame that they're hoping to open by?
yeah, I thought I'd heard through the grapevine November-ish was the general, but I could double
Uh-huh.
check that. But so
That's great. And that will definitely attract more businesses.
Yes.
That's terrific. Oh, we have a question by Commissioner St. John.
Yeah, a question, for Guido or staff. Can you give us an update on what's happening with the cell phone tower that's on the corner of California and Marina?
yeah,
And-
so September 9th, so this commission approved the use permit for the tower on May 25th. And then on September 19th, that Tuesday, I came back from the APA, the city council approved the lease to actually have the tower. Because remember, you guys had authority over the use permit. Council has authority over the
Over
property
leasing.
and the lease. So the council approved that September 19th.
I
So-
have to say, I watched that and they didn't seem to understand that they were supposed to be looking at the legal language. They were far more interested in whether or not they could approve the height of the tower or should it be moved and I was pleased, Guido, when you reminded them that what they were looking at was the,
Yeah, well, all the
lease
praise
agreement.
goes to Allison and Nick. They helped did the underlying staff report. And a lot of those slides and a lot of the background material was done by Allison and Nick, so they deserve the credit.
Thank you,
We fed
Allison
all
and
of that.
Nick.
We fed all that to Matt and then he rejiggered it for the lease purposes, but Allison and Nick did the bulk of the work, so.
That's fantastic. Well, it was a painful meeting to watch, but I'm glad they finally understood what they were required to do. So, yes, Commissioner Jacobson.
I was just thinking we did the same thing when we looked at it.
Yeah, it's hard when you're and yeah,
Yeah,
it was our duty to make
to look
that
at the height
decision
and
when
the
we-
aesthetics and,
Yeah.
yeah, they had to look at the lease terms.
right.
And that was basically their jurisdiction.
And
so.
it was difficult because it certainly from the pictures, it was not a pleasant thing to see. No. But then we have to look at what the law allows for us to be concerned about and you do the best you can. You do the best you can. So did you have any other updates for us?
Housing element, we're having, I think I might have shared with the commission, we met with the HCD staff informally at the 45-day mark. They have 90 days to get back to us. And that was on September, whatever, 11th or 12th or whatever. They had very minor edits on our housing element.
Oh,
And then we're meeting with them again October 5th. And we're hoping we're going to get pretty close to not a lot of comments from the state at the 90-day mark. And then we'll be able to hopefully be certified.
And then we
Hopefully
qualify for grants. et
grants
cetera.
and loans and above.
You know which ones you're going to apply for?
Yeah, and I might have mentioned this before, but it's not insignificant, the work that you guys do on the housing element, because that makes us eligible for safe routes to school, active transportation program, Caltrans grants, pro housing grants. So there's a lot of money. So when you're plowing through that 300-page document, know that you're really helping us get that funds that help your community.
Oh, gee,
So-
do you think Caltrans would consider finally approving on and off ramps for Imjin Parkway and widening that bridge?
Well, we'll see. So anyway, so yeah, so housing element's gonna come. So I guess the gist of what I'm answering is just, we've got the housing element coming back. Allison's making progress on the local coastal program. That's gonna be coming back. We're making progress on the general plan. I'm bringing the downtown plan back to this body in the next 30 to 45 days. The objective standards project's coming back to this body. All these ordinances that we're working on. So you're on the commission at a good time. This was an important topic for us to update our ordinances. Thank you for the commission, and stay tuned for a lot more interesting and exciting work. So thank you for volunteering your time.
Go ahead, Allison.
I think I included the planning commission on my announcement to the city council, but we did also just learn that we were awarded an additional grant from the coastal commission for $500,000
Wow.
to start next on a comprehensive local coastal program update. So the big whole 1982 thing. So the smaller coastal hazards and sea level rise amendment will be coming very soon. We're gonna have a public workshop and then go right from the public workshop into a planning commission meeting early November, I'm hoping, on the smaller amendment. And then we're gonna go straight into a big comprehensive update of the LCP. So super excited.
Allison, I did want to ask you about the Planning Commissioners Academy. I think you
Mhm.
sent an email out.
Oh, Karen did.
I think.
Oh, it was
yeah.
Karen.
Yeah.
Okay.
So December, I think that's when we'll start to get the invites for that.
Okay. So I just wanted to make sure that the commission still had plenty of time to
We do.
decide whether.
And
or not they want-
I've tasked Karen with organizing that.
And do you know how many spaces will be available for the commission?
I think last year we had space for 3, so probably have a similar amount. So if we're able to rotate the ones who went last year with the ones who want to go this year, that probably is an
I think
equitable
that's a good way to
solution.
do it. Yeah. And so for those of you that have never been, it would be
Yes.
a wonderful thing to consider doing. I had decided that this year I wouldn't even try to go. I've been a lot.
Yes.
So it definitely is time for others to be able to go and participate and learn and take advantage of what the city offers and what the state.
Yeah, and
offers.
you're on the commission at an awesome time. I don't know if the commission's aware, we're building 3,600 homes in the city of Marina in various stages of development. We're building 625 BMR units. And we have 140 BMRs within the dunes. I mean, and this doesn't even include Cypress Knolls, which we still have to kind of get off the ground.
I was going to ask
So,
where
I
that
just-
was in the process.
I'm geeking out as a planner. I'm very blessed to be here as an employee. It's a really awesome place. I mean, we have a lot going on, but it's just, yeah. So it's a
This-
good time to be here.
Yeah,
So
this reminds me of the time, I will share this with the commission and with staff, when, I don't know if any of you were around, but when the base closed and the excitement in the 90s, the excitement there was in the community at large and the staff at the time of where Marina was headed, the huge opportunity for us when the base closed, and to have, unfortunately, several things that came along that had a huge impact on the process, but to see us really moving forward at breakneck speed at this
right,
point,
exactly.
it's very exciting.
Yeah. So more to come.
Okay, any other, because we did major project updates. Do you have any correspondence?
No.
No? Are there any other comments from commissioners? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to give my appreciation again to staff for the preparations for today. I both the from the assistant. What is he?
Alex.
Oh,
well,
I
for
think he
Al-
was talking about Matt,
Yeah.
this.
Oh, Matt, our
the
assistant city manager.
Yeah.
Yeah, his presentation was very comprehensive and opened up a lot of unknowns. And it was Alec. Yeah,
Alec did
his
a
was
great
very
job.
good, a great job on the preparation for the vendors, the food vending trucks and sidewalk vendors. So
Yeah.
hats off to the staff again.
Thank
for-
you.
Yeah, and I agree with Guido. The commission really did do a very good job asking very appropriate questions, and nobody's questions should be ignored. My only comment was not to denigrate any of the questions that were asked, but to point out the legal requirements when you sit on the
Right,
planning
right,
commission. So no offense to any, and I hope none was taken. So we are adjourned.